Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where we are now in our third season of helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, dietitian, running coach, twin mom, and fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchuk Performance Nutrition, I've spent over a decade helping runners learn to fuel their bodies better, unlock their best running performances, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. This podcast is all about helping you become the very best runner you can be by teaching you the running-specific nutrition, training, and recovery strategies that you need to reach all your wildest health, fitness, and running goals. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, join me each week as I share my best advice, interview guest experts, and talk to everyday runners who are conquering their goals by tapping into the power of performance nutrition, with a side of some myth busting too. And if you're looking for even more tips, resources, and strategies for runners, you can find me on Instagram at Steph the Runner's Dietitian or by visiting www.stephanienatchuk.com. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Start today's episode, I just want to really quickly invite you to download my free fueling guide and strength training guides for runners. Currently available as a handy little bundle for you all in one at the link in the show notes. So just to give you more information, in this free fueling guide, you're going to find my top fueling tips for runners. As well, in there, I've put together some meal ideas and even a couple of recipes for your pre and post run fuel. We've also got some suggestions for what to fuel with during your run to make sure that you just have the best overall performance possible. If you've really been struggling to understand what to eat, when, where to start when it comes to supporting your running with better nutrition, this guide is here to help you kickstart your running journey. The other guide that I mentioned is my strength training guide for runners. We know that runners are notoriously bad at consistently getting their strength training in. So this guide includes both a PDF resource, it's got some tips, some guidelines, as well as a link to my series on YouTube where I walk you through all the exercises in this program, giving you some suggestions on proper form, how to modify if needed, how to progress things if needed. This is a really great beginner's guide to strength training for runners who want an effective but efficient full body workout that is going to support the key muscles and movements you need to run stronger and help stay injury free. So once again, both of these guides are available as a handy little bundle. So you just click on the link in the show notes, enter your email address once, and both of the free guides are going to get sent to your inbox right away. I really hope that you find these guides helpful and that they support you and your running goals in the most effective way possible. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where I'm really excited to bring you this conversation with Diane Wing, who is a previous, just recently, I'll say retired client of mine. Who, we worked together this past season to accomplish some really ambitious running goals that she had. And she's got something even bigger and badder coming up in a few weeks, which we are, coming here today to tell you about and for me to ask tons of questions about, which I think everyone's going to be really interested in. So thank you so much for joining me, Diane.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So let's start with your running origin story and, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into running in the first place.
Okay. Well, I'm a mom and a grandma. I also teach grade 1. I started boot camp and then running kind of for my own mental health after my husband passed away. Then I did in, I think 2014, I did the Manitoba marathon, the half, as part of a relay with some cousins. So we did it as a tribute to my late husband. And then, I don't know, I kind of enjoyed it and caught the bug.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you find, I find for some people, it's the racing bug, like it's the excitement of the racing atmosphere and everyone being there and all of that that really gets them. For other people, it's like the training. They fall in love with the process of running, getting ready for a race. Was it one or the other more for you, or just a combination of both?
I think it's both because I like the running and I like the training, but I like that I have to sign up for a race to keep me committed to the training plan.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, having something on the calendar and honestly, I think this is one of the reasons why I got more and more interested in working with runners and now almost exclusively work with runners is because I also am very like goal and kind of like task focused. Like I like to have that end point of the thing that we're working towards, like just the way that my brain works. Like I like to have those sort of parameters of everything. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that. So you've been a runner for, I mean, over 10 years now at this point. Where along the way did you decide that you wanted to work with someone on your nutrition and your training? Like you've got lots of experience, and when did it kind of, come to be for you that you thought maybe there was some gaps that you weren't addressing?
Well, I seem to have a lot of problems with like I always have to go to the bathroom during a race. And I'm just like, oh, it's frustrating. And I find a lot of my friends don't have to do that. And since I was going to try and qualify for Boston and I was going to do the run across Manitoba, I figured that maybe this would just be the year to try and find somebody. And one of my friends or one of my coworkers actually, she's like, "Oh, I follow this person on Instagram. You should check it out or whatever." So that's
Yeah.
how I yeah.
Yeah. So it was predominantly like just GI issues and just wanting to have a better understanding of that so that you could run your Boston qualifying marathon time, but also as we're going to talk about as we get through this episode, uh, you know, putting together an ultra endurance event running across our province here of Manitoba, you know, you don't want to be spending more time in the bathroom or being unable to eat and take in fuel than you're spending running.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And so when we got into this process of looking at your nutrition and, figuring out what the issues might be and all of that stuff that went along with it, what were the most surprising things that you learned when you started paying attention to your nutrition as a runner?
Well, I think I was even maybe like surprised, a little frustrated at first because I just wanted the answers. Like I wanted you to tell me like, okay, this is what you need to do. And
Yeah.
I did guess I didn't realize how specific it was, like how like, oh, well, we got to try things and it's going to be different for different runners and all that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
right? So I was like, oh, I don't just get the like the
Just,
secret. Yeah.
yeah. The secret is you have to find out what works for you. That's the
Yeah.
secret.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
I do remember at one point I'm like, am I gonna get diabetes from this? Because I do remember like I don't normally take in a lot of sugar, and I'm like all these gels and stuff that I'm taking. I'm like, okay, like I'm putting a lot of sugar in my body here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
And
do
it's
remember
a
that being interesting.
Yeah, and I mean it's a very valid question and also a very valid concern when, out there outside of running space, you're constantly inundated with like how bad sugar is for you and how you should be limiting sugar and not having sugar. And I remember one specific conversation when we were talking about carb loading of, me kind of just giving some examples of different foods and you're like, those are all things that I would absolutely not eat in the days leading up to a race. You're like, that is exactly the opposite of what I would normally do. And it's funny how we get so much information from so many different places that when it comes to fueling as a runner, people are doing all kinds of different things because you just don't really know.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing was you like told me to eat more, and I'm like, I think I eat more than anyone I know. Like that's ridiculous.
And for everybody listening, I mean, one thing that you really need to know about Diane is she is not just a runner. She, runs 5, 6 days a week. She plays multiple sports multiple days a week. She, has an active job as a teacher of young kids. So, when we're talking about fueling, it's not just fueling for like, the 30, 40, 50 miles that you might run in a week. We also have to take into account all the other stuff. Oh, and strength training that she's doing 3, 4 times a week. Like, there's a lot of activity here. And so, yeah, you are doing more activity than probably everyone else you know. So it stands to reason that you probably have to eat quite a bit more than everyone else you know too. And so what are some of the things, the biggest things that you started doing differently in the last 6 months as you went through this process of just learning more about fueling, training your gut, incorporating intra-run nutrition into your plan? Like, just what were all the things that kind of shifted for you from maybe races that you ran last year?
Okay. So definitely using the gels and the nutrition, the drinks or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
had I actually ran a marathon with just water. And I remember somebody telling me in the marathon, you could die from that. I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Oops.
Yeah. So trying those, that was a huge adjustment for me.
Yeah.
And then just really paying attention to what I was eating the night before, like for if I did have to stop during a run to go to the bathroom and stuff, like just trying to really I knew you were going to ask me, what did you eat the night before? I told you I
Yeah.
had Ronaldo. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to pay attention to what I'm eating a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I love this point that you made about, you've run a marathon just taking in water and nothing else. And you live to tell the tale, right? And, obviously, and we'll, kind of get into the details about this in a few minutes here. Obviously, you did have a better performance this time around than you've had in previous races. But this is where it also gets so confusing and conflicting for people in the running space because, you've got lots of people who, didn't die running a marathon with just water. Is it risky? Absolutely. Do we recommend it? Absolutely not. But people do it and they're okay. And sometimes they even put down some pretty good performances doing it that way. And so then when you try to make a case for like, no, no, you need carbs, it's like, well, need is a very strong word, because yes, you can survive without it, but certainly it's, safer, more effective, and really good for improving performances, especially as we start to get into that ultra endurance space, which you're heading into, in a very short time. And so your recent Boston qualifying time at the Fargo Marathon is not the most challenging thing that you're setting out to do this year. So we have alluded a couple of times to this run across Manitoba that you're planning. So tell us about that. How did you decide that you wanted to run across Manitoba, and what sparked this idea for you in this plan?
well, I'm turning 50 this year. And I'm like, well, that's a privilege that a lot of people don't get. And I knew I wanted to run across Manitoba. So I was like, it's about 500 kilometers. So I'm going to do 50 kilometers a day for 10 days is kind of my plan. And then I just needed like the perfect kind of, okay, what do I want to do this fundraiser for? And I decided to do it for Kelly, my late husband, who lost his life to suicide, right? So I'm doing it for CMHA, for the mental wellness and suicide prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And also like growing up, my mom suffered from depression. And I just think that we really didn't know a lot as children. And we maybe like see her as disengaged or lazy, something like that. And I think that we felt kind of abandoned. But it wasn't until I lost Kelly that it was like, okay, maybe, that's why she's still with us, right? Because she did what she needed to do to make it through, kind of thing, or whatever, right? I think there's like more awareness now, but I think there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
also, like with my daughter, I seen, friends, people that she knew, like teenagers trying to commit suicide. And I was just like, okay, this is crazy. Like the stress that these teenagers are under, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's like an area that we could target. And of course, being a teacher, right? You're like, education is so important, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it probably starts really young too, like even at the age of children that you're teaching, helping them understand things like different emotions and managing emotions and feelings, like things that if we don't have an understanding for, we don't have education around it, like then how can we process or manage frustration and anger and disappointment as we get older.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah, yeah. So, where can people find out more about the cause that you're raising money for? Where can people support and donate and, just give you a high five and stuff like that for planning a run 50 kilometers a day for 10 days? Like that's absolutely wild.
Yeah, I would love for people to come along the way and or you know what, even just show kindness to the people around you. Like just you never know what people are going through, right? So just being aware. Also, if people do want to donate, we're going to put the QR code in the notes after, I believe.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We'll link in the show notes and make sure that you guys can find that QR code to scan and be able to contribute and show your support to Diane. So are you going to be doing, you said you'd love it if people came out and, ran along with you for stretches of it and stuff like that. Are you going to be posting your kind of route and your plan for each day of where you expect to be, or how can people who are interested in showing up and running some miles with you, and try to keep up along the way, know where you're going to be at what times?
Yeah. So I think it's like probably pretty hard to say exact times or anything like that. But I know that I'm going to start. So I'm going to go start at the Saskatchewan border and go to the Ontario border. And I'm going to start on July 9. And so my son is going to drive the car along
Yeah.
to kind of help me. So he's going to be every 10 kilometers kind of. So we'll like keep in touch. I don't know exactly what we're going to use for to know exact location, but he'll know
Yeah.
exactly where I am, and
Yeah.
I'll like try and post it as much as I
Yeah.
can.
And so you're going to be sharing your journey and people can like follow along with where you're at and kind of know where you're going to be at, send you a message, plan to meet up to do some miles with you. And what's your Instagram handle that people can connect with you and follow along your journey with?
It is at Diane.Wing 27.
Fantastic. So, yeah, you'll be able to find the link to donate here in the show notes for the episode. You'll be able to follow along Diane's journey as she prepares and tackles a run all the way across Manitoba over the course of 10 days. And what I really wanted to ask about, because this always fascinates me. Last summer I interviewed Dave Proctor, who's the current world record holder for the fastest run across Canada. And, these types of things absolutely fascinate me because, you have like thinking about the logistics of where you're going to be, where you're going to spend the night, what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat, like just the resources and the planning that go into these types of things. I just find incredible to like, where do you even begin? So that's my question for you, because I really want to know is, when you decided that you wanted to do this, where did you start with thinking about and planning the logistics? Like, is there like a secret guidebook somewhere? Or, yeah, how did you go about planning for this?
Okay, so I have this like amazing friend, Juno, who ran across Manitoba some years ago, and I did some running with him during that run. And I talked to him and
Okay,
just
yeah.
kind of said, like, okay, who could I get in touch with? Like, how kind of to do that. Also, I'm kind of winging it, to be honest. I'm I got my son on board, so he's going to drive the car. I don't have like a big camper or anything, kind of like they did. But I have a friend that Peter that might run with me as well, so that will help.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to make sure that I looked on the GPS for like towns that were 50 kilometers apart, kind of thing, like so
Okay.
where I
Yep. Yep.
could stop or whatever. So I'm going to camp for a couple days. But then I was like, well, I'm going to really need to wash some clothes. So I think that it's going to be like just even to not sweat too much that I get blisters and chafing and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yep. Yep.
So I'm going to need to like change clothes and stuff. So I thought, okay, so the first 2 nights I'll camp, but by the third night I'm getting a hotel room that has a washer and dryer.
Okay.
Just
Okay. Yeah.
kind of stuff like that. I did buy a little camping porta potty if I do have to stop along the road,
Yeah.
like a big curtain thing to go around. I'm still learning as I go. I was a
Yeah.
little surprised because there's not as many stops as you would think, because 50 kilometers really isn't that far for someone to drive. So there's
Yeah.
not like all these restaurants along. I was just thinking, I'd stop at restaurants along the way and stuff, but
Yeah.
I guess I'll have to bring more of my own.
Be a little more
Yeah.
self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, gosh, like, one one of the things that I was sort of thinking about when I was planning for this conversation was even what are some of the things that you wouldn't think of? Like what are some of those details that the average person wouldn't think of? And for me, honestly, like you just said, where like washing clothes. Like
Yeah.
I just that oh my gosh, yeah. Like I mean, I don't have 10 different running outfits that I
Yeah.
would like wear, like maybe some people do, but I certainly don't have 10 different, things that I'd be able to rotate through in that time. So yeah, being able to like stop and do a wash of some stuff and all of that is huge.
Mhm. And I think it's a little harder because we're girls too. Like
Yeah.
we can't just stop and pee on the side of the road.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
also, I was lucky because I had you. So I'm like, okay, before I lose you, like, can you please tell me about the nutrition, what I'm gonna need for this? So that helps.
Yes, yes. And it's funny. Like the number 5, I don't know if that's like a big number for you in your life or that comes up a lot for you in your life, but like, it's so interesting to me. You're turning 50 this year. And so you're running the 500 kilometers ish across Manitoba, 50K a day. But we also, did an assessment of what would your nutrition needs look like for that type of event. Like what is the target for calories per day that you ideally want to take in? And it's about 5,000 calories a day. So like I don't know what's going on with that number. But it's about double, for the people that are listening to this conversation, it's about twice as much fuel as we, had Diane aiming for during her marathon training cycle. And I don't know if you really expected that number. Like I don't know what kind of number you had in your head, but when I gave you the plan and said, yeah, it's going to be about 5,000 calories a day and here's what that looks like, I just remember your reaction was like, "Oh, like that's a lot."
I sent you a list of food and you put every single food on my like 1 day plan. Like, what? Like, I need that all in 1 day.
You're like
That's
that wasn't what
all.
I Yeah, that wasn't what I meant. That wasn't what I meant. Yeah, and what I want people to understand is when you're doing these types of multi-day events, whether it's a multi-day like trail run event, the kind of 3 day things are becoming a lot more popular. I've had lots of clients participate in those types of events. A lot of the Disney events are multi-day. I know some of the marathon weekends now are doing the multi-day event thing. And, this is next level in that it's, 50 kilometers, which for people who aren't familiar with kilometers is more than a full marathon distance every day for 10 days. You are simultaneously trying to refuel and recover from the 50 kilometers you just ran while you're at the same time needing to replenish muscle glycogen as quickly as possible for what you're going to be tackling tomorrow. And so we don't want to see at the end of that 10 days or whatever duration of time someone's running that they're just fading and, losing a lot of muscle mass and getting weaker. And, because this is where either worst case scenario, you can't finish and you can't reach your goal, or you wind up injured and you're not able to finish because you get an injury. So keeping those energy levels topped up as much as possible is really important, even though it doesn't like it's only 10 days, but that's a huge amount of stress the human body is going through in that 10-day period.
Right. And when we were practicing for the marathon, I pretty much for the 2 days before that only had carbs, like
Yeah.
only plain pasta and like potatoes and a bagel.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, obviously, I can't live on that. So, I'm going to need, I need some protein and stuff in there.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, this is different because now it's not, I can't just plan for the before the run. Now I have to plan for like, because it's after and before kind of, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, you're in this constant, constant process of needing all of the nutrients coming in. And same thing, like even with fats, right? Fats are a very dense source of energy. If you were trying to meet your needs for this on just 5,000 calories a day of mostly carbs, the way we would do a carb load for a shorter race, we say shorter, we're talking about a marathon, like it's all so relative, you know. But when you're carb loading for just one event, it's so different because yeah, you can sacrifice a little bit of fat and protein in your diet for 2 days. Nothing bad is going to happen. But when you're doing something like this for days and days and days, you also, yeah, you need to have that balance of nutrients in there. And if you're trying to fuel that with just carbs, the amount of food that you would need to eat, like the sheer volume and quantity that you would have to consume, I think would just be I don't know if it's even feasible. I'm not sure it could be done. You just be, eating spoonfuls of rice like the entire
all
50
day.
kilometers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely it's a whole other thing. And you have to think about all of this stuff, like from the logistics of yeah, where you're gonna sleep, where you're gonna wash your clothes, what are you gonna eat, when are you gonna eat, where are you gonna get the food from, who's gonna bring it to you? Like there's so many pieces to it that it's a really, really admirable thing that you're doing. And to be planning and doing this all on your own with the help and the advice of a couple of friends along the way. But to take on something like this is really incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and so when you're looking back at the last 6 months here of training, getting ready for Fargo, and then sort of immediately switching gears to preparing for this run across Manitoba, what are some of the biggest lessons that you're taking with you, and what are the things that you want to share with the people that are listening that are maybe kind of resonating with your story of where you were before, of like feeling frustrated with gut issues, not seeing the performances that you want to, not really understanding where there seems to be this ceiling that you keep hitting. What would be your advice for them?
Well, you can do hard things. You got to listen to your trainer because I know I had a lot of doubts. I think before every race, I'm like, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's important to fuel properly, and it's important to figure out what works for your body. You know what? I used everything in the Fargo run, like in that marathon. I used everything because I was trying to get Gatorade, and they didn't have enough Gatorade at these stations. So when I was stopping at the stations, then I'd have to go catch up to that because I was trying to stay with the pace bunny. I
Yeah.
have to, so I used the sprints in there when I had to catch up to these pace bunnies.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was able to, like, we had practiced getting faster at the end of the runs when we in the training, and I was able to use that at the end too. The last like 5 miles, I'm like, you know what? I think I got a little bit more. I'm going to try and go a little bit faster.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like all that stuff. It all kind of comes together in the end. But
Yeah, yeah. And, coming for you, I know you've worked with other coaches intermittently, along the course of your running journey, but this was quite different than what you had done before. And it was so great because you had so many questions about, why are we doing it this way? Or this is how I usually do it. And what's the purpose of this workout? And, just really wanting to understand my approach and wanting to make sure that the things that I was recommending were getting you where you wanted to go. And we kept kind of coming back to the goals and what the goal was and all of that. And I think it's really important when you're working with someone, when you hire a coach, to be able to ask those questions and understand the process and, not just sort of blind. Like I know some runners want to just give me the plan and I'll just do it and that's it. But I think that there's such power in understanding the process so that, like you said, when it comes to that, kick in those last couple miles of the race, there's so much mental power in remembering, oh yeah, you know what, I had a progression run on my plan just about every single week, and so I know what it feels like to give more effort towards the end of a run, and I can dig into that now versus not really understanding what runs are for what and why we do certain things. And then when it comes to you're out there on the race course and you have that strategy, you don't really feel like you have that deep understanding of the strategy. So I love that actually came to your mind. Oh yeah, I think I've got a little more there. That's so cool to hear.
yeah, Yeah. And I didn't have a lot of trainers. I had one, but she only came one time and then she was pregnant and put on rest. So it was only one. It was just like training plans that I'd found in like books or somebody had made for me or something that I was following.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know what I was doing. I just was like, I just liked to know the why, especially I remember towards the end where you're like, you cut out my strength training and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But you're like, no, you need to like save your energy. We're just gonna focus on this and like this is our tapering now. We're doing this
Yep.
for this reason. I'm like, okay, then we'll do that.
Yeah.
I can get back to it after, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, any final thoughts, pieces of advice, things that you want to share? And then before we go, just remind us where people can find you and follow along your big run across Manitoba.
Okay, I definitely want to say thank you for all your help.
Mhm.
Because there was definitely times when I doubted myself and I just had to trust the process. For anyone's listening, you can do hard things. If you're struggling, call Stephanie. Yeah. And if anyone would like to say hello or join me along the way, I'd love that. And please be kind to other people. You never know what they're facing. And if you are able to donate, please do. We're going to have a link in the bottom. And I guess I'm going to start this whole social media Instagram thing. And my handle is at Diane, Diane dot Wing, Wing 27.
Fantastic. Well, it was an absolute pleasure working with you these past 6 months, and nothing makes me happier as a coach. When someone sets an ambitious goal like a Boston qualifying time, achieves that goal. Seeing the notification pop up on my coaching app and seeing someone's finish time and that like it's there's no better feeling in the world. I mean, maybe actually accomplishing the goal and being the person who ran the BQ feels really good, but like, being part of that journey and seeing it all come together is amazing as well. And I hope that you have a fantastic run across Manitoba, and I will hopefully be able to get out some miles with you too along the way.
That would be so awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in and listening to Diane's story. And I hope you grabbed, some good inspiration, had a couple laughs along the way here with us. And we will see you right back here for next week's episode. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.